Good evening. I have been on a bit of a Northern Line kick recently, so how better to continue my little mini-series on stations that have changed their names than with a trip along the Northern Line. I'm going to go south to north because honestly, once we get up north, things begin to get a little complicated. The first station we come to is South Wimbledon, which, for some reason, I have no daytime footage of. In the original plan, this was called Merton Grove, but it opened as South Wimbledon in 1926. 2 years later, it was renamed South Wimbledon Merton, and there's still a roundel with that old name. But at some point in the early 50s, it reverted to the even older name. From 1926 to 1950, Tooting Bec was known as Trinity Road. Clapham North opened in 1890 as Clapham Road, but in 1926 it gained its current name. That was the same year that Clapham South opened, so I assume it was renamed for geographical clarity. But if anyone knows differently, please do feel free to let me know in the comments. Oval was another 1890 opening when it was the Oval after the cricket ground. But by the end of the decade, it was just Oval. I mean, you know, people are busy, you can't expect them to waste their time saying the all the time. At Kennington, the line divides in two. The two branches are known as the City Branch and the Charing Cross Branch. The names come from the companies that built them, the City and South London Railway and the Charing Cross, Euston and Hampstead Railway. The City Branch is older, so we'll start there. Don't expect this kind of logic to continue, though. The first station that deserves an honourable mention is Bank. When the City and South London Railway first arrived, their line terminated at a station called King William Street. In 1900, they extended their line further north and abandoned the old station. The new station they built to replace it was called Bank, the name by which we know and tolerate it today. Also in 1900, the station at Moorgate opened. Back then it was named Moorgate Street, like the older Metropolitan Railway station it connected to. It gained its current name in 1924. King's Cross St Pancras opened in 1907 under the name King's Cross 4 St Pancras. I mean, really, talk about throwing shade on St Pancras, what did it ever do to you? In 1933, the 4 was dropped. So now we'll head along the Charing Cross branch. Incidentally, before the lines were merged, this was often known as the Hampstead Tube. First up is Embankment, and here things get complicated. Actually, we really need to look at Charing Cross and Embankment together because their histories are intertwined. The station we now call Charing Cross was opened in 1907. In 1914, the station we now call Embankment was opened. In order to avoid confusion, fat chance, the old Charing Cross was named Charing Cross Strand, and the new station was Charing Cross Embankment. In 1915, Charing Cross Strand became just Strand, and Charing Cross Embankment reverted to Charing Cross. In 1976, Charing Cross became Embankment, and in 1979, Strand became Charing Cross. If you're wondering why they didn't just do that in the first place, the reason was that the station on Embankment gave interchange with the District Line station, which was called Charing Cross. Honestly, it's just a mess. Speaking of messes, let's talk about Tottenham Court Road. The Central London Railway had a station here by that name. In 1907, the Hampstead Tube arrived and they named their station Oxford Street. Neither name was wrong exactly, they are on the junction of both streets, but it was mightily confusing when the stations were right next to each other. The reason for this was that the Hampstead Tube had opened another station called Tottenham Court Road, which was definitively on that street. However, in 1908 it was decided to provide an interchange between the Central London and Hampstead stations. Therefore, Oxford Street became Tottenham Court Road, and Tottenham Court Road was renamed after Goodge Street. Warren Street opened as Euston Road in 1907, and the following year was renamed, presumably to make it consistent with Goodge Street. Both Goodge Street and Warren Street are side roads leading off Tottenham Court Road. Despite only having its original name for a year, the station still has a tiled sign from when it was first opened. At Euston, the line comes together and then separates again after Camden Town, one branch to Edgware and one to High Barnet. For no particular reason, I'll start with the Edgware branch. Hampstead has always been Hampstead, but it was nearly Heath Street. In fact, it came so close to being called that the station tiles actually carry that name. Technically this isn't a station name change, but I'd feel weird if I didn't at least mention it. Brent Cross opened in 1923 under the name Brent. In 1976 it was renamed Brent Cross after the new shopping centre. In the planning stages it was known as Woodstock. Burnt Oak opened with its present name in 1924, but was originally going to be called Sheve's Hill. These changes of name during the planning stages reflect the fact that this area wasn't very developed in the early 20th century, so there wasn't always an obvious local place to name the station after. In fact, in 1928, Burnt Oak hedged its bet and took the name Burnt Oak Watling. This was gradually dropped over the ensuing years, but there is still a pair of roundels with this name. Now we get onto the High Barnet branch, and oh boy. The first station we come to is Archway, which opened as Highgate in 1907. This was a bit of a swizz, as Highgate is at the top of a very steep hill. If you got off the tube expecting the leafy streets of Highgate, you were in for an unpleasant surprise. In 1939 it was renamed to the slightly more honest Archway Highgate. In 1941 the actual Highgate station, actually in Highgate, opened, and for whatever reason the powers that be decided to call the older station Highgate Archway. In 1947 they removed all ambiguity with the present name. East Finchley represents the start of the oldest part of the Northern Line, being opened in 1867 by the Edgware, Highgate and London Railway. At the time it was called East End Finchley, but took its modern name in 1886. Finchley Central also opened in 1867 as Finchley and Hendon. In 1872 it dropped the and Hendon. In 1894 it gained a church end, and in 1940 it became Finchley Central. At Finchley Central, a spur leads off to Mill Hill East. This was just plain old Mill Hill from 1867 until 1928. West Finchley, back on the main line, has always been a well-behaved station that never had to have its name changed. Woodside Park opened in 1872 as Torrington Park, but only kept that name for a decade, whereupon it was redubbed with its present-day name. Totteridge and Whetstone was another 1872 opening under the name of Whetstone and Totteridge. Why did they feel the name needed changing? I have no idea. I'm not a historian, I only play one on YouTube. And that brings us to the end of our journey, which terminates at the never-renamed High Barnet. Well, I hope you enjoyed this highly changeable tale from the tube. If you did, please do leave a like and consider subscribing for more. Thanks as ever to my donors on Ko-fi and Patreon. You are the identifiable geographical location to my planned suburban railway. And I'll see you all again very soon for another tale from the tube.